Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight I'm going to talk about social support and what it has to do with the topic of our course, accessibility for information technologies. First of all, I'd like to define social support. Traditionally, social support is defined as the provision of physical and emotional comfort. The result of social support is that the recipient feels as if he or she is part of a caring community. In this caring community, assistance of various types is exchanged through social relationships that are formed within the community. And as we will see, social support has a powerful influence on an individual. Social support can protect or buffer from the bad effects of stressful events such as the death of a spouse or job loss. People with more social support tend to fare better through these bad times than those with less. With direct effects, perceived social support, or someone having the feeling that he or she is being supported, has direct positive effects on the person's mental health. They report that the support actually helps them to feel better. Social support theory began to flesh out way back in the 1890s when Émile Durkheim, a French sociologist who actually was the one who formally established the academic discipline of sociology, did studies on suicide rates and found that migrant industrial workers without a good social network tended to have higher suicide rates than those with stronger networks. These included church ties, as he also found that Catholics had lower suicide rates than Protestants because of the strong social influence of the Catholic Church. John A. Barnes was an Australian and British social anthropologist. He was the first to use the concept of social networks in a scientific context in a 1954 article called "Class and Committees in a Norwegian Island Parish." In his study of a fishing community there, he noticed that social networks had formed when workers formed little communities around their fishing jobs. If anyone here has watched Deadliest Catch on the Discovery Channel, you can get the picture of what went on during the fishing jobs. These were intense times when people spent a lot of time together for a period of time. His study found that while people created social networks, not all of the links were supportive. However, some of the links, such as between those who worked together on the fishing jobs, were temporary, so they could be tolerated for a short period of time. Social networks in the study were found to have one or more of these qualities: reciprocity, where people would do things for each other; intensity, where, as in the fishing jobs, people were there together in close quarters; and complexity, where people may have more than one relationship with the same person. For instance, a friend may be a supervisor. John C. Cassell was an epidemiologist who studied how the social environment contributes to disease outcomes in both humans and animals. At that time, during the early 1970s, studies were being done on socio-environmental changes such as life-changing events and stressful working and living conditions. Cassell gave a lecture to the American Public Health Association in 1976 on the contribution of the social environment to host resistance. According to Cassell, social support served as a protective factor against negative health outcomes. Ironically, and unfortunately, Cassell also became terminally ill and died in 1976. James S. House is a professor of sociology at the University of Michigan. In 1981, he wrote a book called Work Stress and Social Support. In this book about formal and informal social relationships in the work environment, he confirmed Cassell's findings of the protective effects of social support. He also categorized support that people give and receive into 4 types, which I will elaborate on shortly. Those 4 types are emotional support, instrumental support, informational support, and appraisal support. Ramona Mercer does research in nursing, studying, among other things, the relationships that give pregnant women support, and she and some of her colleagues in 1985 and in other works had findings that were very similar to House's findings in the workplace. She categorized social support into pretty much the same categories, although she called instrumental support physical support. Now I will elaborate on the 4 types of social support. Emotional support is what we immediately think of when we hear the term social support. If I perceive that I am getting emotional support, I feel like somebody cares about me. I feel loved. There is trust and caring in the relationship, and I feel like I am part of a community and that I belong. I can also offer emotional support to people going through the same thing that I'm going through, or going through the same thing that I've already gone through. Friends and family can offer this type of support, as well as various types of professionals, such as health professionals and counselors. Instrumental or physical support involves concrete material support, such as money, time, in-kind assistance, and other interventions on a person's behalf. When we think of the work of a social worker, we think of this kind of support. Social workers connect their clients with agencies that can meet their material needs. Red Cross volunteers and others who drove around the streets of Tuscaloosa after the April 27 tornado, handing out food, water, and ice, are more examples of those who have provided instrumental or physical support. The recipients of this kind of support feel like their material needs are being met. Informational support includes advice, suggestions, or information that can help a person respond to a personal or situational demand. People who provide informational support give you information to guide you in the right direction. Some people who are in Dr. Bonici's information technology class are familiar with people whose job it is to provide informational support because they have called UA's Office of Information Technology's help desk. Help desk workers, for the most part, guide you through a process so that you can fix a problem that you are having. Finally, we have appraisal support. This includes affirmation, feedback, constructive criticism, and social comparison. This is the "how am I doing" type of support. We can often see this type of support when someone is trying to make a positive lifestyle change. At Weight Watchers meetings, members are applauded when they reach certain goals or make changes in their eating habits. Another example that is extreme, but however it illustrates the point, is the A&E show Intervention. That show is a tough love type of appraisal support, and usually the recipient does not want to accept it at first, but by the end of the show, the recipient appreciates the feedback the family, close friends, and counselors had given. Here's the first discussion question. In a library or other information agency, where everything in the library or online is information, what's the difference between informational support and instrumental support? Although recipients of social support may not always perceive it as supportive, social support is always intended by the provider to be helpful. It is consciously provided in a caring, trustful, and respectful way, and it is provided in the interest of respecting the receiver's right to make his or her own choices. As we've seen in earlier slides, research in social support has been done in a lot of different fields, such as healthcare, including medicine, nursing, and public health, where research was done on the effect of social support on health outcomes. Research has also been done in psychology, social work, business, and communication and information sciences. Social support research, especially that done in the communication and information sciences arena, is rooted in research about the social networks that people form and the communication that people have within and between those social networks. Much of the research was influenced by Mark Granovetter, a sociologist, especially an article of his published in 1973 called "The Strength of Weak Ties." He found that social networks consisted of strong and weak ties. Strong ties are made with family, close friends, and associates, and people we feel are similar to us. Weak ties, on the other hand, are acquaintances and those we don't know as well, but there still is some tie. Granovetter found that while emotional support came mostly from strong ties, informational support came mostly from weak ties. Can anybody tell me why is that? And that is our second discussion question. Based on Granovetter's work with strong and weak ties, other research done in communication and information sciences has involved how people receive the various types of social support via social media, virtual communities, blogging, and distance education. Also, as we saw in the Jerkowski reading, bibliotherapy and library as place can be perceived as supportive by library users. So now we get to our friend the MESS Lab, the Mobile Experiential Sensory Laboratory. So what does that have to do with social support? But Jackie, I thought the main purpose of the MESS Lab was to show us what the world looks like with a cheap pair of reading glasses. Actually, the MESS Lab was created with social support in mind. Those who use the elements in the MESS Lab are in the process of learning how to provide social support to information seekers experiencing the visual, auditory, and tactile challenges that the MESS Lab elements simulate. And how is this done? It is a three-step process in which you integrate the theory you have learned, the theory of social support, with practice out there in the real world. First, you experience the challenges. Then you reflect on that experience. How did you feel? What difficulties did you have with information access or information and communication technologies? How did people treat you? How did you treat other people? How did it feel asking for help? And so on. After experiencing the challenge and reflecting on the experience, you then internalize the theory and experience and pass on the support to those information seekers out there who need assistance with information access. Now we get to our third discussion question. I know that not all of you have had the experiences of the Alpha gatherings, as we do have a non-Alpha fellow in the class, so I am broadening the definition of the experience. Reflecting on the experiences you have had with the readings for the class, the gatherings for those of you who have gone, the MESS Lab activities that you have done for class or on your own, and interactions you've had with people with physiological information access challenges, describe how these experiences would help you in the way I've just described to provide one of the 4 types of social support. Since we have 4 groups, each group can choose one type of support: emotional, instrumental, informational, or appraisal, and come up with a list.